When Donald Trump launched strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, MAGA world had a choice. They could admit this is a war launched by a guy who told us no forever wars, no wars at all. We're going to end wars. We're going to prevent wars. I'm really the anti-war candidate, right? They could have been honest and said, this is what it is. Or MAGA had the opportunity to move the goalposts. And that's exactly what some of them did. They said, well, this isn't really a war because Trump didn't declare it. Others said, Trump didn't really have a choice. This is almost defensive. Trump's not really starting a war. And then some people got very philosophical and they said, you know, sometimes the way to get the peace is by bombing people. But then out of nowhere, Joe Rogan just admits it. Let's take a look.
I think the whole MAGA thing right now is very divided, particularly because one of the things that they voted for was no war. Well, now it seems like we're in a war, right? So, and it's quick. We're 6 months in, and that's already popped off. And then people are very concerned with now what happens to our troops overseas that are in these bases, that are in vulnerable positions. And
so that's not a leftist talking, okay? That's not MSNBC. That's Joe Rogan, the guy who endorsed Trump just months ago in 2024. The same guy who gave Trump a massive platform with that softball interview and helped sell the idea that Trump 2.0 was like a populist reboot and it's definitely better than Kamala Harris. So to a degree, this isn't about going, oh, Rogan is right on everything now. When Rogan says this, it matters because it exposes the MAGA split that Trump's second term has unleashed. And Rogan's part of a pretty small group that is doing something from the pro-Trump perspective that very few are willing to do, which is admit that what Trump is doing is the opposite of what he's promised. It's not tangentially different. It's not a 5-degree course correction. It's the opposite. And since Donald Trump bombed Iran's nuclear facilities and started floating regime change, although now it's not regime change, all of that, you know, all that stuff, MAGA has kind of splintered into two primary responses. Camp one is saying, like I said, it's not really a war, targeted operation, it's a mission, it's a message. You call it anything but what it actually is. Camp two says he had to do it. It was Biden's fault. Biden was weak and it's Iran's fault. And you know, the concept of peace is squishy and the only way to get back to diplomacy and peace is by bombing Iran. But then there's this third group. And the third group, it's very small, it's inconvenient, but it's growing. And Rogan being part of that group is a good thing. And these are the people who say, wait a second, he said he wouldn't do this and he did it. It's that simple. That's where Rogan is right now. And of course, Bernie Sanders is sitting there, sitting across from him, and he's nodding because Bernie knows that's exactly what it is. And Bernie knows, let Rogan tell it to his own audience because he's going to be much more effective in communicating that to them than Bernie possibly could be just because of who the audience is, not that Bernie's not a good communicator. So this isn't new. The same excuses were made under Bush. It's not a war, it's a liberation. We're not occupying, we're stabilizing. And the same people who used to call that deep state propaganda are now cheering it on if it's presented in all caps on Truth Social. Trump used to say stuff like, we wasted trillions in the Middle East. Never should have been there. And now he's the one who has been lighting it up and tweeting, now is the time for peace. So it's like Iraq 2.0, but with worse grammar and a lot more social media platforms. And we shouldn't forget that Trump branded himself as the anti-war guy. He told his base, I won't start wars, I'll get us out of wars, I'm the anti-war choice. That was the promise, it was clear. And he's ordering strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. He threatened that there were many targets left. He's talked openly about make Iran great again, like he wants to be John Bolton all of a sudden. So you don't need to be a pacifist to call this a complete reversal. I'm glad Rogan did it. Most MAGA influencers are still pretending this isn't a problem, save a few. And Fox News is calling it strong leadership. Tulsi Gabbard, you know, who knows where Tulsi Gabbard is at this point in time. But when Joe Rogan, one of the guys that helped get Donald Trump elected, says this simply isn't what they voted for, there is a moment of clarity aspect to it. If Trump gets away with breaking this central promise and can hold his base, he can do anything. This was going to be the line. No new wars. The thing that made Trump different from the Bushes and from the Clintons and what Hillary was going to do and what Kamala was going to do is that he wasn't going to do any of this stuff, any of this war stuff. That's gone. Now he's calling it the 12-day war. He says it's a ceasefire, it's over, it's all good. But that doesn't change the fact of what he did. And MAGA is mostly too afraid to call it what it is. Rogan did it. Bernie nods. We'll see what sort of reaction we see from the Rogan base, but it's very interesting.
People in my audience know I am a bit of a pastry connoisseur. Our sponsor, Wild Grain, is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wild Grain's boxes are customizable depending on what you like and prefer. They've got their classic variety box. They've launched the new gluten-free box. They have a plant-based box that's 100% vegan. And it just takes the hassle out of baking because all items bake from frozen in 25 minutes or less, nothing to clean up. My experience has been awesome. I love the croissants. I was having people over last week, half an hour before, preheat and throw them in the oven, and people love it. Definitely, the croissants are my favorite. The quality and the freshness of the items is extraordinary, and it is just so convenient. Go to wildgrain.com/Pacman to start your subscription and get $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box every month. The link is in the description.